guys, welcome back to Steve's Farm Adventure. Today I'm going to transplant some of these small tomato plants that we started from seed. I'm going to put them in a little larger cup, give them a little more room to develop their roots. And I'm putting them partly in the seed starter that we had to begin with, and then partly compost. So I'm going to mix the two and see how that does, and if that gives them a little more of what they need to really get going. And I had a problem with finding some more just kind of small size pots, and of course with the virus and everything that's going on now, we're not supposed to be out looking for things like that. So I'm just going to make do with what I have. I have some paper cups, and they're kind of waxed, I guess. So they're pretty sturdy, more so than just the average paper cup. Just happens to be what I had on hand. So I'm going to puncture some holes in the bottom of them for drainage, just with my scissors. And we had done that with the styrofoam cups that we had previously planted in as well, because you do want to be sure that you have some drainage holes in it. So I'll puncture those, and this is how we just did it before, just stabbed it right in there. Keep your scissors open a little bit, and you can do 2 holes at a time, and you can decide how many that you think you need. I would do 2 large slits or 4 if you want. You don't want everything to be retaining too much moisture. You want it to be able to drain in there. So I'm going to try and replant these beefsteak tomato plants that are very small, but we did start them from seed. And they've only been planted, they've been transplanted for a few days, but I'm going to put them in something bigger and give them a better chance to develop and to be able to retain more moisture. And we'll give them a few more days, maybe a week or so probably, before we put most of them in the ground. I don't really mind that some of them are small and are behind some of the other things that we planted, because I don't want all the tomatoes or all of any or most items to come in at the same time. I'd rather have a bit of a staggered harvest. So if some of them are larger, then we can go ahead and put them in the ground, and then there's some that are a couple of weeks behind or whatever. That's good with us. So I'm just going to put some of this seed starting potting mix in the cup, and then I'm going to use what else is already in these that we have previously put in there. And what I'm using is Miracle Grow seed starter. I just got what I could get. I have no problem with this, but I wouldn't have picked this maybe over something else. I don't know that it matters that much, as long as it's a pretty good brand or pretty good quality, and this doesn't seem to have too much trashiness in it. So these days you just get what you can get, and then some other times we might be a little choosier, or we might find that one thing works better than another, but we'll take this, and I think it'll be just fine. So I didn't water these first, and they are a bit dry, so I don't know how this is going to do. I'm going to try it this way, and then if it seems that they don't want to stay intact and that I need some more moisture in it, then I'll water them in a bit and let them kind of soak that up. And I think I'm going to need less of this other soil in there, since I already have quite a bit in with these. They are wet further on down in there, and so that's fine. So when you're transplanting these, what I've read recently is that they will develop roots all the way up the stem. So when I'm going to transplant them, I'm going to transplant them right on a little higher than what the soil level already was, pretty much all the way up the stem. And this one is really sad. It's really dry, although it is moist down in there, so it does have some moisture. but it doesn't really look like it in this cup. It looks really parched. So I'm going to give them a really good drink here in just a few minutes, and they'll be fine, I believe. Let's see how this one does. If they're coming out pretty much intact, I'm not going to put more water to them until I get them in there. That one came out really nicely. All that's pretty much intact, and I can just set the entire thing down in this other mixture, and then just add some around it to fill in the sides and to fill up a little higher. You also can pull those small leaves off the bottom if you want, so that you're burying the stem a little deeper and you're not burying a leaf. But the way these are, and no longer that it's been since I transplanted them, I don't think I'm going to do that. I think I'm just going to fill it on up to where it's high on the stem, and then give them a chance to develop roots further up the stem and let that go, because I believe that'll work very well for these. Just be sure and press that down so that you're getting good contact in there as you're planting it. So I'm going to hold my hand over this. Don't press on the plant. When you got a little bit bigger plant, you would do this to put the plant in between. It didn't really matter that much with this. Okay, so I transplanted quite a few of those tomatoes. A few of them I haven't done yet, but I switched over and started transplanting these pepper plants into larger vessels. They were all in these little cells like this, and some of them I put into the cups like we were doing the tomatoes. A few of them I put into a larger pot here, and I'm going to see how they do, if they grow faster in these larger pots. Do they like being transplanted more? I'm just going to kind of just use that as an experiment. But I did want to show you this one thing. Be sure that you are marking your plants. You can buy plant markers, and that's certainly fine, but I found that it's easy to reuse some things as well. So what I've made these from is, this is a piece of blind from a vinyl mini blind. You could use whatever kinds you have, I guess, if you have some blinds. I had one that was too long for where it was, and I took some of the slats out to make it shorter. So I don't know how many people use vinyl mini blinds anymore, but if you don't use them, perhaps you're taking them down and replacing them with something else, which is something I'm going to do in some of my windows. But in any event, I didn't quite know what I was going to use them for when I saved them, but I just knew that that was going to work out for something. So I saved them and just had them in a little stack, stood them in this tiny little corner, and when we started planting things and we're talking about having little stakes to mark them, I was like, maybe those mini blinds would be a good thing. So I went and got them. We tried them when we first started planting our seed, and that's what we marked most of these little cells with, like this, back in March when we started seed. And you can cut them to whatever length you want them to, whatever works for you, depending on what size thing you're planting them in, or you can cut them all the same size and just make it work. They're easily cut with your garden scissors or just a pair of household scissors. I just write on them with a Sharpie, and don't have to buy anything special or pay anything extra for them. So I've decided that if I replace blinds, I may throw away the bulk of it, but I'm going to save those slats out of them and just kind of put it with my gardening stuff, and I think they'll come in handy. And I've also thought, hey, if I go to a estate sale or yard sales or whatever where they're selling those things for little or nothing, I might actually just buy one or two if I don't end up with them, or you could do that to find you some. I'm sure you're going to be able to buy them for little or nothing. There's a lot of these slats in them, and by the time you cut them into a few pieces, you have a lot of plant markers. There's a lot of other things that you can use too, paint stir sticks, and just if you have scrap wood, little slats of wood. But sometimes those things just don't seem to be handy when you need them. So this was just something that I thought that maybe I could reuse, recycle or reuse, and so I'm happy to be able to use them for something that for us is productive. Now when I'm planting in these little cups, I just write it directly on the cup. I'm not wasting a marker in them most of the time, unless I'm going to be setting them down in something where I'm going to have to keep picking it up to see what it is. Some of these cups I had already used for tomatoes. I just drew a line through that, wrote pepper on it, and I'm good to go. Now we did also generally write the dates. Like these peppers, some were planted in a certain date in March, and then I transplanted them today. So I've written some details on it. That kind of helps you to know how long it took to get to where you are. And if you got them under grow lights or something, wow, they're going to be big. They're not going to be little like this. We got them in a cold frame. There was a couple of nights that we had some pretty strong wind that was pretty cold, and some of the stuff got a little nipped even in the cold frame, because you do have air, you do have slits in there where air can circulate. The top doesn't fit down tight on it. You don't want it to be too tight. So we did learn also that when we're going to have a really cold night, especially if it's windy, that maybe we're going to have to put something over the top of that, not just close the lid, because we did have some things get a little frostbit. But most of it has survived. It just isn't growing at the rate at which it would have had it not gotten so cold. So anyway, that was my tip. Take your mini blinds, whatever else you have that's this kind of configuration, especially something that's like this is so easy to cut. Cut it to whatever size you want. Use a Sharpie, make your own plant markers. Keep them in right on the other side next time, or just toss them and start over again. But it's just various things that you can use rather than having to purchase the specified plant things that's called plant markers. And yeah, they've got a nice little pointy thing on them and all, and that's cool if you want those. They're real cute. But I just like something a little more serviceable, something that I can reuse and that kind of thing. So I want to give you that tip today. Not sure how much more replanting I'm going to do, but we may be back with that, or we may be back with some fencing.